So Craig Holman, you are somebody who's kind of been through it all, but you've also sat in the seat of a player in professional baseball, and you've also sat in the seat as a father watching your son go through the journey as a child, through youth and travel baseball, up through college baseball, and then now into professional baseball. I feel like you have so much guidance, so much information that you could share with our listener, all the things and all the information that these parents ultimately need in youth and travel baseball.
I tell every parent, I don't care where you play baseball with travel. Play games, but make sure he's playing. If you're paying for a uniform and your kid gets in 2 or 3 innings and they're sitting the bench, but they get to practice with these good players, so what? Is he playing? I don't care what any kid does, and I've said this as a parent. If they're not playing, they're not getting better.
All right, so we are joined today by a client's father, I should say. I want to introduce you. So Craig Holman, you are somebody who's kind of been through it all, right? Not only have you sat here, not in this same seat, but in another seat doing this podcast once before. So if anybody who's watching this for the first time has not seen Craig's last podcast that we did, definitely check that out as well. But you've also sat in the seat of a player in professional baseball. And you've also sat in the seat as a father watching your son go through the journey, obviously as a child, through youth and travel baseball, up through college baseball, and then now into professional baseball. So I want to level set that because I feel like you have so much guidance, so much information that you could share with our listener. And I have found the listener, think about it from the standpoint of almost like you, if you're watching this, not really having any sort of access or guidance to all the things and all the information that these parents ultimately need in youth and travel baseball, share with them some things that they ultimately would find value in. So I feel like the best way that we could start this out is really to talk about from the standpoint of just travel baseball, just generally speaking. Share with us, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you've seen in your experience with youth and travel baseball?
And I did travel baseball.
I'm aware.
I was hated in my area because I kind of started. I grew up in Alabama. I don't even know if people need to know that, but got in the Phillies organization. Met my wife when I was in AA up in Pennsylvania in Reading. Eventually retired. Lived there. Had 2 kids, which I would like to talk a little bit today about girls softball. I had a daughter that went through softball, travel, went to college, just left, is coaching now at Belhaven University down in Jackson, Mississippi. But she was a first-team All-American shortstop in college. So, the girls too, I've a couple of calls this week with Matt Lytle and his daughter speaking. He's quarterback with the Panthers. His daughter's trying to figure out where she wants to play softball, so I do speak to them as well. So we'll touch on the girls also. But travel baseball with the boys is, I just went and hung out with Rich DeLucia, 10-year big leaguer. He's running a location in town, 3 up, 3 down. Went out and watched a few of their teams. We discussed things, and what problems I dealt with 10 years ago, they're still dealing with them. They don't go away. They don't change. It's like the game of baseball. It's going to be the same in 50 years it is now. Make good pitches, you get good guys out. But it's the parent that doesn't identify, hey, this is better for my child, this travel organization, than this travel organization. There are low range, mid, and high level travel baseball. There's the Canes, who people know mostly pay for everything, and they have the guys, a lot of high-round draft picks. There's the Keystone Bombers are in town. They got a great organization, and Joe Hershka runs it. They do a great job. You got Mike Spadali in the area that runs a travel organization. I tell every parent, I don't care where you play baseball with travel. Play games, but make sure he's playing. If you're paying for a uniform and your kid gets in 2 or 3 innings and they're sitting the bench, but they get to practice with these good players. I hear that a lot from parents, but he gets to practice with some really good players. So what? Is he playing? Well, he gets in late in the game and he doesn't get to pitch as a lot as you'd like to. Well, why don't you try a travel organization that he would play? I don't care what any kid does, and I've said this as a parent, raising 2 kids. If they're not playing, they're not getting better. They can hang out with superstars all they want to. If they're not in the games and they're not playing and failing and as well as succeeding, they're not getting better. So I have parents say, find the travel and say, is he going to play? You've looked at him. I had people come into my place and try out for my elite team, and I'd go, he's not going to play for me. Oh, but I want him on the team. Why? He's not going to play. I'm telling you right now, I got 15 guys. He's the 16th guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to play for me, but I will send you somewhere else. But he wanted to hang out with the good players. That does no one any good, especially your child.
What I think is interesting is there's a time and a place for that level of thinking where it's like, okay, association matters. But I will say, like, if you're thinking about it from the standpoint of, okay, my son is 20 and he's now had the experience and he's had the development and now he's in a place where I want to get him around the best players, I can understand the thought a little bit more, even though you could make the argument it still doesn't even matter then. But definitely for someone who's, and I'll couch it by saying 10 to 13, couldn't agree with you more. These players, they need to be getting the reps. Because ultimately, we talked about it on the last podcast, everyone is so absorbed with this concept of exposure. Exposure is everything. We have to be around the scouts. And well, wait a second. We need to make sure that these players, they're developing at the basic level and giving them the tools so that when they have the opportunity to showcase those tools, it's something that these people ultimately want to see and that they'll be impressed by. So I think you're absolutely spot on with that.
And kids just need to play. I've said this before. Luke was second-round draft pick last year, $1 million from Cincinnati Reds, pitched at Alabama, LSU. He was not the best player at 8, 9, 10 years old. Not even close. I had kids who were bigger, stronger, faster. He fought hard to get on the field. And if he had not been good enough to play on a good team, I'd say, hey, man, we need to put you on a team that you can play. It's no different than any other child. My daughter was really good at a young age. She could have played anywhere. But I have parents that insist on if he hangs out with these good players, he will get better. Sometimes they withdraw when they're around better players. They feel insecure. I have a kid that comes to the house every once in a while, and I'll hit with him and pitch with him. Good little kid, works hard, and he gets around better players, and his mother, he kind of withdraws a little bit. Yeah, he doesn't feel worthy. When a kid feels worthy, they perform better. When they feel important, we can associate sports with life. When we feel worthy of things, we do better. When we feel pride, we do better. At work, if you tell a guy, I don't know what I'd do without you. I've owned businesses, sports complex, baseball, I have an orthopedic business. Someone that delivers for me, I tell them, I don't know what I'd do without you. And then I tell my most important employee that's going into surgery and all that, I don't know what I would do without you. That's worthiness. I feel good, I'm important, and it matters. So you need to put your child in a situation that they feel important, whether it's hitting 8th or 9th. They still feel important. They don't feel important at any level sitting on the bench, high-fiving their buddies when they come in.
So getting into that mindset a little bit from the parent's perspective, I think sometimes, and we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, there is this belief in travel baseball, almost like social media in a sense. Follow my thinking here.
Okay.
Everything that we put forward is this perfectly designed thing that we're going to showcase. So look, my son, in this video, he's never failed. He's perfect, right? And we need to put forward perfection. That's where it ties into the social media component. And if you think from that place, what they're missing is, that's not the game of baseball, right? The game of baseball is all about failing and then figuring out how through that failure, you're ultimately going to get better, which you will, and then becoming a better baseball player because of it. And so I want everybody to hear what you said because it is so, it's perfectly articulated. When we're talking about young kids, you have to go through the experience knowing there is going to be failure and don't run from it. It's not a bad thing. Your example of even your son at 8, 9, and 10 years old, I think a lot of parents get frustrated, maybe even a little discouraged because their son feels like, well, I'm not as good as this player over here. So I should be doing something differently. I should be playing for a different team. There are these drills I should be doing that maybe I'm not doing. Well, on some level, you need to let him just grow up, right? You need to let his body catch up a little bit. Let him, hit puberty and see what happens. Is he going to grow? Is he not going to grow? I think on some level, one of the biggest things that we're hurting our kids, young players with is they don't ever learn the type of player that they are until much later. As an example, and I'll speak like Jimmy Rollins. A lot of people know who Jimmy Rollins is. Jimmy Rollins, major league shortstop. I mean, this guy arguably could be a Hall of Famer one day, won the MVP award with the Philadelphia Phillies. And there was a story that was told to me when he got to the big leagues, he didn't even really know the type of player that he was. He was still trying to hit a lot of homers. And somebody pulled him aside and told and instilled this belief of like, look, the best thing that you can do as a player is to truly understand the type of player that you are. Jimmy, you're a guy that's going to get on base. You're going to steal bags. You're going to score runs. That's your game. Your game is not to hit 35, 40 homers a year. And so for an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, if they're trying to emulate the big guys in the big leagues who are hitting all these home runs and they can't do it at 8, 9, 10 years old, if they're feeling like, oh, well, I'm not doing enough, I think part of that comes from this belief that, oh, no, we have to, again, showcase this perfection. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm somehow behind.
Correct. It's finding your identity. And by the way, I spent a summer in the locker room with Jimmy in 1999 in Reading while I was rehabbing from Tommy John surgery. He was in AA. I was in AAA for 3 years, had Tommy John in 98, and then missed the whole year in 99. And because I lived in Reading, they didn't send me to Florida and they didn't send me to Scranton. They said, just go out to the park. Gary Varsho was the manager there in AA, but Jimmy and Pat Burrell were there. And two of the guys I hung out with a lot. Yeah. And I hung out with them a lot and I did my work, did my long toss and I left. But during that summer, I saw Jimmy find his identity. And he was, and by the way, he's an incredible guy and just does all the right things. And but it was finding that identity. And kids don't know who they are. And puberty is a big deal. I told this before the last podcast. I had kids at 12 and 13 years old that threw 78, 80 miles an hour. Unhittable. And 5 years later at 17, they were throwing 80 miles an hour. And they're like, what happened? And they were like, you didn't grow. You didn't go through that. Vice versa. My son, who didn't throw hard at all at 11 and 12, but boy, could he pitch. It was pretty to watch. Change up, little flip curveball, put his fastball anywhere. And he kept saying, when am I going to throw harder? When am I going to throw harder? He grew 6 inches from 13 to 14. And he grew another 5. And he's throwing 90 in the 10th grade anywhere he wanted it. So you don't really know. And I keep telling parents that. You have no idea. Come talk to me when he's 16, not 12. So just have fun, work hard. And I know I don't want to repeat things, but sometimes parents may see this podcast that maybe I said in the other one, is my question to every kid is I ask them, are you working hard? And I always look at them and they go, absolutely, Mr. Holman, I work very hard. Well, let me ask you this. Could you do more? The answer has never been, no, I can't do any more. It's always, of course I can. We all can. Okay. And that's what, to me, and once again, I'm 56 years old now, and I've been through everything. I don't think there's anything I haven't experienced through life, through sports, through everything. If you truly desire to do something, it comes down to how many hours of work you put in. That's a fact. If I wanted to start today and said, by the time I'm 66 years old, I want to be a scratch golfer and play on a senior tour, I could do it. I'm very athletic. I play golf. I've shot 75, 76 on good courses. I don't put in the work.
Right.
And when I play a scramble, I play 3 months later, I go play a round. But if I said, you know what, tomorrow I'm spending 3 hours every day. When I get off of work and I get done, and I'm leaving, and I leave the office, I'm going to the course and I'm going to put in work. So no matter what the parent says to me, they can talk to me all they want to. I'm like, how bad does he want it?
Right. Not you.
Not you. How bad does your daughter want it? I'm telling you, I hope Matt Lytle hears this podcast. He's got a daughter that's 6'1", that runs like a deer, one of the best athletes I've ever seen. She picked up softball late, she's a big soccer player, but she went to college and now she's wondering if she's even going to play. Walked on down at a school in Pennsylvania. I won't mention the school. They told her, you're not good enough. I'm trying to get her to go south to Belhaven to play for my daughter. And I know talent when I see it. If this girl spent 12 months working just on softball, she would be an All-American player. And I used to tell people, I said, there's a kid walking the streets right now that's 21, maybe working at the bodega or down at, the grocery store that could have thrown 98 miles an hour. He just never played baseball. Has no idea. Twitchy, 6'3", long arms. He went this, maybe he ran track, but he never picked up a baseball. So I tell parents, is that fair? that there's a kid out there right now that could throw 100 that never, ever picked up a baseball. I don't know if it's fair or if it's horrible or what, but it happens. What parents need to do is expose their kids to about 10 different things. If you talk to any parent that came to my place, they'd say, man, Craig, we love him, but God, he's so forward and sometimes rude. I had little Jimmy come in at 14 and go through a camp, and they'd say, hey, he's wanting to get into baseball and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's too late. I would say that. He's too late. He's 14. He can't catch. He can barely throw. And you want to put him into a travel organization? And I would go to Jimmy and I'd say, what do you like to do? Love computers. And I like to sing. Can you sing? Yes. You know what? He does. He sings at church. He sounds good. Be a professional singer. Put in hours of work and be a singer. So we're going to chase the baseball dream for 6 years. You're not going anywhere. And you could have spent that time playing a piano, a guitar, and maybe made millions as a singer. God did not make all of us the same. And we need to focus. So I tell parents, throw it against the wall. Throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. You may have a Justin Bieber on your hands right here at 12, and you're in here yelling at him because he can't catch, he can't throw, and he can't hit. And I would say, I can throw him 100 balls. He can't hit. His hand-eye coordination is not good enough. Well, that's rude. Do you want me to lie to you and take your money week after week after week? Or are you wanting me to be a good man? And that's what I really pride myself on. It's being a good man and being honest with parents.
One of the things that families don't maybe pay enough attention to is the skill of listening to their son, right? And it's a little bit of what you just said, where if parents can be more hypersensitive to, okay, I know what I want for him. And by the way, I say this fully acknowledging every parent that I've ever come across in travel baseball, everybody wants what's best for their son. They're not doing it because they know they don't want it. My point in saying listen is you'll hear from them whether they have what you're describing, which is, are they going to be willing when everyone else is playing video games, when all of his other buddies are going to go out and do other things, are they going to be willing to say no to that stuff and instead do the little things that is going to be required to make this a career? And that's crazy to say, because if we're talking about a kid who's 10 years old, how do they even know? They don't. And so recognize this isn't something that you're going to figure out at 8, 9, 10. It's going to be something that is going to develop over time. And I think a lot of these families can just take a step back, let it develop, and use the resources and use the desire that you have to make sure that he has all the opportunities. But first, just sit back and test it a little bit. Does he want this? Ask him the questions. Put him out there, right?
What do you love? What do you like to do? And I'll be honest with you, a kid at 10 may love to do one thing, and at 14, he hates that now and loves to do another. I hated tomatoes at 8 years old. My dad tried to give them to me on a sandwich, and at 16, I was eating tomato sandwiches with my father. And I was like, I can't believe I didn't like this at 8, 10 years old. So I really tell parents, he doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know what he likes. She has no idea what she wants to do. They need guidance. And they need guidance up to about 15 or 16 years old. And then they need to sit down and say, what do you want to do? You're very athletic. You can play 3 sports. That's what I had to do with my daughter, is she could really do anything. And ended up, she loved basketball and softball. And I said, where do you want to go? And she said, I think I want to play softball in college. So then that was her junior year. And we started focusing on calling around. And she went on to, I used to tell, I don't think I said this the last time, because my wife always said, my ex-wife now, but we've been divorced 7 years. Best friend, by the way. I don't want anybody to think, oh, it's terrible. But she's one of my best friends now. I used to walk around to the kids when they were like 7, and Luke was 7, and Jordan was 9. And I would say, you're going to be an All-American one day. You're going to be an All-American. I'd tell Luke, he'd say, really? I was an All-American at Jacksonville State, had this big thing on the wall, and I went in the Hall of Fame. And it was in a nice room, and they would stand there and look at the photo of me, and it said Converse All-American, Craig Holman, first team pitcher. And they thought that was great. And I'd say, you're going to be an All-American one day. And Luke would say, yeah, really? I'm like, absolutely. And Jordan would say, am I going to be an All-American? That's absolutely. Both of you guys are going to be All-Americans at 7 and 9. I said it, not making this up, because you can call my ex-wife. She'd say, yeah, I called him an idiot. I did. Every week, I'd say, come here, All-American. You're going to be an All-American one day. And I continue to speak it. Now, this is where my Christianity comes in. Life and death is in the tongue. And I tell people that all the time. Don't speak ill will on yourself. So if you're a parent out there, and if I can look in the camera and I can see, if you're a parent, speak goodness over your children. Don't say, he's terrible, Craig. He can't catch, he can't field, he can't throw. Say, he's working on things. If it's a girl, say, Craig, she can't catch, she misses every ground ball. She's working on things. She's going to be good. But I told both of my kids that they were going to be All-Americans. Well, guess what I just hung on the wall at my house? Because I did LSU, Alabama jerseys at my daughter's jersey. 3 All-Americans lined up. Luke Holman, All-American, LSU. Jordan Holman, All-American, Huntington University, and Craig Holman, All-American in Jacksonville. All 3 of us are there.
Who's at the top?
It's still me. I'm putting mine up there. I said, when I die, you can move mine to the bottom. But I spoke that. In order to think you're a businessman, you have to dress nice and feel like you're a businessman. I've made a lot of money after baseball. When I got out of baseball, I went, man, I'm 31 and I've been doing this. And I was heartbroken. Tommy John's horrible comeback. I knew when I walked off the field that day I was going to get released the next day with the Phillies. It was terrible. But when I got out, I dove into businesses and I walked around like a businessman. I bought about 5 suits and got into medical sales and opened a sports complex. You have to believe you're this before you become that. And I just tell every parent, if he wants it bad enough, he'll be just fine, with or without you. That was the thing. And I don't think I said this, it's worth saying. When I went home to Jacksonville State, going in the Hall of Fame, I took Luke there, Jordan went to the thing. My next door neighbor was a lady, Mrs. Yoakum. She walked out. She must have been 80 years old. I walked out and met her and gave her a hug. I mean, she was there as long as I was tiny. And she said, congratulations, I read in the paper, you're going into the Hall of Fame at Jacksonville State. I said, thank you so much. And she said, can I tell you something? And I said, sure. And she said, I don't mean for this to sound rude, but, and this is a bad term to use these days, but it was fine. She said, I thought you were retarded as a child. And I looked at her now, I'm like 35, 36. And I said, excuse me? She goes, you stood out there in that hot sun all day and threw that tennis ball against that wall. You did it for hours. And I would tell my sister, this kid's been out there for 3 hours throwing a ball against the wall. There's something wrong with him. But you did it every other day. And you did it for years. And I'm not embarrassed to say it. I was 16 years old, still throwing a tennis ball against the wall and fielding and throwing it. But I laughed with her. And I said, no, I'm doing just fine. And running an orthopedic business, everything's good, and I'm not slow. That's what I said to her. But she thought I was a slow kid because of what I did as a kid. I didn't have a dad out there. I didn't have anybody. I was out there throwing, and I played games. I spray painted a square, and I threw to it to hours. I'd pitch 9 innings. I would write a roster. Bob Horner, Bruce Benedict, Dale Murphy, I had all those, Jerry Royster. I'd write them up, and I would pitch a 9-inning game. The whole game, I must have threw 150 pitches against that wall. And I did it every 2 or 3 days. And then I'd do it and go pitch a Little League game. Now, that's insane, but that's what I did. And I told people that. It was all I had. It was all I had. I hit rocks for hours. I threw against the wall. So I talked to Luke and Jordan about these stories, and they heard them. I didn't get anything that I didn't deserve. That's a fact. No one worked harder than me. I worked when no one was watching. I worked when they were watching. So I tell all the families, if you're not willing, my agent used to say back in the day, if you're not willing to sprint when the distance is unknown. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
So there's a statement that says, when you're willing to sprint when the distance is unknown. And it always rang with me, is who's willing to just take off sprinting and you can't see the finish line?
Mm.
And he said that you got to be willing to sprint is unknown. And it hit me because I was willing to do that. I was willing to do it. I was that kid. Now, I didn't have the little proper, my mom left and dad divorced when I was 7. My dad raised me alone. I didn't have, all the things that kids have. I didn't have a nice glove. I didn't have shoes, but I had talent. and I lived in it. Now, I teach kids that I think are tough. I teach kids that I think are in the middle, and I teach softies. And I used to tell my son, I got to get you tougher. I used to tell him that all the time. And so there's things that kids need other than baseball lessons. And that's what I want to touch a little bit today on finding someone to work with your child. I have parents that all the time say, my Uncle Billy, who played a little college baseball, works with my son. My son's 13, but there's 2 pros down the street that everybody else goes to. But my son loves his uncle. Stay with the uncle. And they look at me and they go, yeah, but can he? I said, does your son enjoy working with your uncle, with his uncle, your brother? Yes, stay with the uncle. Your resume of your instructor means nothing. And once again, you're sitting here talking to a guy who's got a good resume, 2-time All-American, Hall of Fame, 10 years in the Phillies organization. I got a great resume. Doesn't matter. A guy across town that's really good with a kid that can teach will do him just as good as a pro. I had instructors at my place that would walk around on their cell phone during a lesson. That really lit me up. And I would have a talk to them. And I'd say, this kid and his mom paid, and you're over there 10 minutes into a lesson taking a phone call. I don't want that. And if you're going to do it, I don't want you to do it here. Because I could call those shots because I own the place. I had people come in that never played college baseball, finished high school, really loved the sport, studied it, read. Man, it was like they were teaching their last lesson before they were going to their grave. That's how devoted they were. So I would say, find an instructor like that your son or daughter enjoys, and that's your instructor. And that's the key.
Yeah, there's a care factor. You can't measure that based on their resume. It doesn't, like, does the person who is the ex-big leaguer, does he have knowledge? Well, of course he has knowledge. But why do some of the worst, or I should say it this way, why sometimes the best players don't make good managers?
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah. I say it all the time.
To them, maybe it came easy. Their instruction for the player who, let's just say he's giving a hitting lesson, and this guy was a Hall of Fame hitter. He's looking at the young kid saying, well, just do this. Well, to that kid, his body moves different. It doesn't come as easy. Maybe he's not capable of actually sharing the information in a way that's going to resonate with the kid. But if it's somebody who actually had a similar career path, we'll say, or similar skill sets, maybe he has the capability of breaking the swing down in a way and saying something in a way that is just different and unique. And maybe it does resonate with that kid. So that's great advice.
I was a great hitter in high school. Thought I was going to hit in college, ended up pitching. I teach hitting really well. I love hitting. I study it. I love doing it. I was a good hitter. When it comes to pitching, it came natural for me. I was a great pitcher, had really 4 good pitches. But I tell people, because there's people in town that taught while I was teaching, and the parents would come in and they'd say, well, you played pro, you should do this. And I would say, being humble is key, and having a good heart to me is the best instruction. Pick a great person to teach your child over someone with accomplishments. Your child gets more out of the lesson than just baseball. Wrote that at the top of this because I had 2 calls 2 or 3 weeks ago, about, hey, we got a chance to work with this guy. He was a 3-time, all-star. He's down here. And then this guy never played college baseball. I'm like, take your son in, see who he connects with. Yeah, I'd go with that guy. Now, here's the only thing I offered, and I would say this. You're going to a guy that did not play above high school. You're going to this guy that played a little bit of college. You're going to this guy that played a long time in pro ball. What I could do for a kid, because I did play at a high level, was, hey, you're going to warm up in the bullpen this year in high school. You got great stuff. You're 17 years old, and you're going to have a really good bullpen, and your stuff's going to be really good. And you're going to go to the mound, and it's not going to be there. You're going to warm up in the bullpen one time, and it's going to be terrible. You're going to bounce your curveballs, changeups terrible, fastballs all over the place. And you're going to go to the mound, and you're going to look up at the 6th inning, and you got a 1-hit shutout. You know why that's going to happen? Happened to me a lot. Okay? Those are things that someone who didn't play can't tell that kid. They can't give those life experiences of, hey, I lost $1 million in my first business. I was just devastated, and then built my second business and made $10 million. Someone that's never done that, they can't tell you how it happened. Somebody can say, well, I think people that start businesses sometimes struggle and then it may fail and then they do well. Same thing in sports. I can tell you when I was struggling hitting, what I actually was thinking in the box and what I did to get out of a slump. Someone that didn't play may say, well, I don't know what it's like to be in a slump, but man, I can teach you the mechanics and the motivation. Maybe they're Tony Robbins, motivational speaker, teaching baseball. I want that guy working with my kids. So the parents, get off the resume. I will use that as a get off the resume of the instructor. There's some really good people out there that played a year or two of college, struggled, like you said, love the game, but boy, did they struggle. And when you struggle, you try to figure stuff out. And Scott Rowland, if you hear this, don't be mad at me, but I played with Scott, one of the best athletes probably I've ever seen, could just do everything. Everything came easy to him.
Yeah.
He didn't struggle. He could jump out of a gym. He could dunk from the free throw line, the guy, the best third baseman I've ever seen, and he could hit. He's not going to teach stuff going, well, it was hard for me and I struggled. Now, he had some bad years that he could say, boy, I had a slump. But guys like that, it just came natural.
Right.
And so those guys, you said, the guys that struggle become the managers. The guys that really fought hard, try to figure the game out, they're the best leaders because they were in the trenches every night.
Oh, yeah.
Battling.
So I want to go back to what you were talking about with throwing the tennis ball against the wall. Okay. Because the majority of our listeners, let's assume, well, I know they're, parents, but assuming that you're talking to a parent, what's interesting about what you said is if you had a dad that told you every day, son, I want you to go outside and you're not allowed to come in until you throw 300 times against the wall, that would have been totally different than you deciding yourself, I'm going to go out and I'm going to choose to throw for 3 hours against the wall. I think sometimes parents, because they may want it so bad for their son, they realize, you know what? Before he even has the opportunity to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to tell him he has to do it. And you're losing an opportunity there. Every single player, if that's a lesson they need to learn, will find that passion and desire inside. And they're going to come a point in their career because of the failure where they're going to ask themselves, how bad do I want this? If my way of getting better and improving as a baseball player means that I have to do this, I'm going to do it.
Yes.
I know what I'm willing to do. And how disappointing would it have been if somebody took that opportunity away from you and merely told you you had to do it rather than let's see if he does it. And I know that it didn't happen quite like that, but you went through this experience where you realized, do I want this? Like, do I really? And maybe for you, it wasn't a decision where you said, I definitely want this. Maybe it was like, I just love throwing the baseball. So I'm going to go, or the tennis ball at that point. So I'm just going to go outside and I'm going to do, why would I want to do anything else? Yeah.
There was nothing else. I mean, it was, and I'll tell you what sparked me. I think I was like 7 or 8 years old. And there was an autograph session in our town. I came from a smaller town, but the Atlanta Braves signed autographs at the mall. And my dad took my brother and I. We'd never, we weren't loaded with money. I'll put it that way. He took us over there and I got to meet Bob Horner, Del Murphy, it was Gary Matthews.
All the guys you struck out.
Yeah.
Against
and they were sitting
there,
but I was in awe. And when we got back home, I think I threw for 2 hours against the wall. And I went out back and we had a pile of rocks and I would get the yellow wiffle ball bat and I'd pitch up and I would hit rocks for hours. And then it was locked in then. Whatever it takes, this is what I'm going to do. This is my love. And I was good basketball. I was a good football player. I played football my senior year. I was an all-state football player and MVP of the team my senior year. But baseball was just something I loved. And I was going to do everything that I could. And the failures, I got to tell you this, I've told probably no one this. I went to Jacksonville State University. I won 2 high school state titles. And I went to Jacksonville State and I said, I'm going to win 2 national championships here with you. And he laughed as a freshman. He said, that would be nice. I'll take 1. And I remember him saying that. So my sophomore year went really, really well. I'm 12-0. The year first team All-American, and we're playing New Haven, Connecticut, semifinals, Division II World Series. If we win that game, we probably win the championship game. Todd Jones was a first rounder, closer with Detroit for years. He was set up to pitch the national championship game, and I got destroyed. I faced him the opening round, and I think I threw 9 incomplete game, 3 hits, 1 run, and in the semifinals, it was the only game I lost all year. And everything I threw in there, they hit. And I don't know, I was tipping pitches. It was just terrible. Second time around, same tournament too. It was a lot of bad stuff. But he walked out to the mound in the 7th inning, and I still feel brokenhearted when I tell the story. He walked out, and he'd never won a national title. He'd been in the World Series 1 year, I think in '83 or something. This was '89. He looked at me, and he looked like death. And he walked out, and I think it's 8-2. He scored that many runs, and I handed the ball, and I said, "I'm sorry." And he looked at me, and he said, "It's okay." Boom. And I walked off. And that was our last game. And it was my sophomore year going to my junior year. I literally tried to kill myself for the next 3 summers, not physically, working out. I worked so hard. I put the paper on the wall.
Yeah, to never feel that way again.
So I was heartbroken. And I apologized to him. He's like, "Craig, it's enough." And I went, that was the chance to win that national title. Okay. But I worked to the point that my father would say, I think you worked too hard. And my dad did not play sports. He never gave me any advice at all. Great guy, gave me motivational stuff, and you're as good as anybody, but he never played. He never gave me one advice. One time he wanted me to hit cross-handed when I was like 15 because he said he heard Hank Aaron did. I said, "I'm good." I swear to God, I tell her about that story. Anyway, long story short, I go back my junior year, and guess who wins a national title? And I'm on the mound. Toronto takes me in the 12th round. I don't sign. I come back my senior year. Guess who gets the final out? National championship game, not just in the world. I pitched the national championship game my junior year, national championship game my senior year, back-to-back national titles, and I brought one of the rings here.
Oh, nice.
Back-to-back, two times in a row. And I remember after my senior year, he looked at me and he said, "That was the craziest thing," because I sat before you got the final out. Cal State North was beaten in Central Missouri State. He said, "I remember you as a freshman. You looked me in the eye and you told me we were going to win 2 national titles." And I believed it because the way you said it to me. But that was how I did things. So, and I raised both of my kids. I raised both of my kids that way. If you don't believe it wholeheartedly, and I told Luke this, you're getting closer. And he says, "I'm going to pitch in the big leagues." You say that. I'm going to be an all-star in the big leagues. And I truly think you will with just what he can do. It'll never happen. And it doesn't matter what dad thinks. It doesn't matter what mom thinks. You have to want that more than your mom and your dad combined, which is saying a lot because, man, these parents, they love their kids as much as I loved mine. And I told them, I would look at the crowd every Sunday, my big camp, and I would say, "I know how much you love them. I do. I know it. They're going to need to struggle, and it's going to hurt your stomach, but they have to struggle and fail in order to work harder. They must." And all the parents, they all came back years later and go, "God, that struggle, I saw him grow. I saw him grow from it." So, I always say, embrace the struggle, embrace it. On the last podcast we did, I said, and I'll say it again, I say it to every parent, if you're hoping and praying that they never struggle, they're never going to be good. Yeah. They're never going to make it. That's where the anger and the work, it festers during struggle. You go there, you sit on that bench, and my daughter, I got to say this because we've talked for the last month. So this spring was her last year. They get to a regional and they play Emory. They win and go through the winner's bracket. They play Emory, and Emory's got to beat them twice. So they're already celebrating, going, "We're going to super regional. We're going to a super regional." So Emory takes the lead. She comes up in the bottom of the 7th. Bases are loaded. They're down 1 run. And she's at the plate. And I went, "Oh my gosh, she's going to walk this off and go to a super regional." And she's always been taught by me, jump on the first pitch. They coming in, they're going to try to get ahead, get a strike, jump on. She hit the first pitch about 199 feet on a 200-foot fence. Center fielder runs all the way back, catches it, bangs up against for the 3rd out. And they were just frozen. Well, they got to turn around and play another one. Emory takes the lead on them again in game 2. She comes up with 2 outs in the bottom of the 7th again. And I went, there's no way a kid should be put in this situation twice. And they were down by 2, runner on first, and she hit a ball to right field that I thought was gone. And it hit the top of the fence, bounced back in. She goes to third. The girl on first scores. Now they're down by a run. Catcher came up, ground out to short, and they get beat by Emory back-to-back game. So the reason I just told that story, we've had therapy over those 2 at-bats for months. That's all we've talked about is, God, if I got a little bit more and all that. But she's going to take that into coaching, and she's going to be a phenomenal college softball coach. She's going to be so good. She's down with Coach Griffin at Belhaven, who's Connor Griffin's dad. What a guy to be coaching under. Kevin Griffin is an incredible dude. But Jordan's down coaching with him at Belhaven. And those struggles and that final out she made, she's going to be able to pull a girl to the side and say, it's okay. You're going to have another chance. You'll be good. You're going to learn from this.
It's the old adage, life happens for us, not to us. Right. But if you think about that, if you look at life, you brought this up at the onset, whether it's baseball or any other sport, softball, basketball, football, these sports teach us more than just what's important in the game.
I mean, I wanted to pull the numbers before I came into here with the drive out, but it's like 1-2% of high school kids even play college baseball. I mean, the number is so small that I tell the parents, they all say, what if we put in all these years of money and travel? And I'm like, it's the best years of my life. I just talked to Kobe Gromlich, is a player, played for me kind of like a son, just spoke to him on the ride out. And he's down at Campbell University, had Tommy John transferred. But he said, man, what I would give Coach Holman to ride to a tournament with you again when I was 14, 15 years old. And it brought tears to my eyes. It did. I mean, him and my son are very close. And, there were about 5 kids that hung out at my house all weekend. And I get choked up because they call me a lot. And they go, man, I would love to go back and take a ride with you 2 hours over to Jersey and do a tournament. And these guys are in college baseball, a lot of pro guys, But it's those are the best years of my life. And so I tell parents this, say you go 7 years, you start at 10 or 11 to 18, and he doesn't get the scholarship. So what? He's going to be a great employee. He's going to work. He may start his own business and do amazing stuff. All these kids that played for me, they're tenacious, man. They're, Luke's right now the only one that's been drafted and got out of there. Whit Renner was drafted. Luke was drafted. There's 2 or 3 other, but a lot of D1 players. But I go, so what? And I wanted to bring that up. I wrote this down for parents, and I wrote a few things down because it irritated me 2 weeks ago. I sat with a guy, I play old man baseball over 50, and I'll go play, just stay in shape. And we were playing, Mike Johnson was the guy who played on the other team. And one of the guys said, I heard he played pro ball. Big guy, pitcher with the Pirates, a little bit left-hander. And they said, because I'm a guy that spent 3.5 years in AAA, 10 years in the minor leagues, and went to big league camp one time, never pitched the big leagues. And one of the guys on the bench who never played college baseball, he goes, yeah, I heard he played pro ball. And the guy goes, he's got like 20 days in the big leagues, big deal. That's what he said. And, there's no names, and it's like, and then they have the words, the cup of coffee. So here's what I tell people. You play high school, you're a good player, and you go to college, play college baseball. Did you play pro ball? No, I didn't get drafted. Did you play pro ball? Yeah, I got drafted. Did you play in the big leagues? Spent 6 years in minor leagues, didn't play in the big leagues. Did you get to the big leagues? Yeah. How long did you play there? A couple of years. You weren't enough? No, I can go on and on and on. You weren't a Hall of Famer? You didn't go in the Hall of Fame. Guys do 10 years in big leagues. And I've heard people say, he was an average player. And so what I like to really get down to parents is at some point, even in business, I've made great money. And I remember when I started with my businesses, I wanted to make this much money. And then when I made that, it wasn't a big deal. And then I wanted to make this much money. And it wasn't a big deal. So I try to, chasing that carrot is really disappointing. And at some point, you're going to be done playing this game. And I promise you, you'll feel like a failure. I played a long time. and was an All-American, won 2 national titles. And when the Phillies called me in that morning after 10 spring trainings and said, we got to let you go. And you got, good contract, AAA, but they wanted me to be a pitch coach. They would like you to be a pitch coach. I got to go home and think about that. But at some point, you're going to be, Kershaw is a stud. He's going to retire this year. And he's going to go, I wish I could have done more. He is. It's never, ever enough. So that's what I try to tell the parents.
The question that's coming to mind for me that I feel like is something I'm feeling compelled to bring up, which is, and I want every parent to really think long and hard about this. Don't just gloss over it and just give like your first initial reaction as your answer. Would you choose, if your son is 10 and you're looking at the next 7-8 years, would you choose to put him through travel baseball? Would you choose to spend all the money that I'm sure you can imagine it's going to cost? Would you choose to sacrifice family vacations? Would you choose to go through the next 8 years if you knew that he was not going to get a scholarship, he was not going to get drafted, he was not going to reach, quote unquote, kind of the dream that every young kid, and I'm sure your son at 10 years old probably has ambitions to achieve?
They all do.
Would you choose that pathway anyways? And what's interesting is, I think, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of families would probably get to a place where they say yes, but I'd be curious because I feel like maybe their initial reaction to that question is, what? Isn't there something better that we could be doing with our time, resources? But here I am talking to somebody, and look, you were somebody who played professional baseball. You brought up, obviously, you were an All-American, 2-time national champion, your son, 71st overall pick in the draft, daughter. I mean, I've heard about your daughter. We've talked about her. She could rake. She's going to be an amazing coach. You have this experience. And so maybe you're the guy who actually got to receive some of the benefit of a lot of that work. But with all of that being said, it would be tragic, as I think about this, for any parent to hear that question and to say, the answer to that is no, I wouldn't do that. And I want you to answer, I want you to speak to that parent, because I feel like you're somebody who, you think about the time that you've had with your kids going through those ages. If you knew it was going to end and there was going to be a last travel ball event, a last high school game, and that was it, would it be worth it?
Absolutely, 110%. It's not even close. And that is a conversation that I've had with parents when their kid was 11. If you play travel and he is 7th, 8th in the order hitting, he's a functional player. He's not a superstar. We don't know where he's going to be. But this road that you're going to go down, and the work ethic and the commitment, is a setup for success in life. And that's what I really try to get the parents to understand. We're not talking baseball here. I only hire athletes. When I had a lot of employees, the first question when they sat down, I'd say, did you play high school sports? They didn't know why I was asking. No, I never played. I just didn't, I went to school and they don't know what it's like to be on a team. They don't know what it's like to have a gut-wrenching loss. They don't know what it's like to work hard and see the work happen. Hard I work, luckier I get. It works in everything, in every business. But the times that the parents, I talk to parents that were on my travel team, and they go, man, what I would give to have another weekend sitting around chatting with the parents. I would give anything for that. Half the kids didn't go and do anything. Half the kids certainly didn't go on and play pro ball. They went to JUCO a year, maybe didn't finish after that, 2 and done. They loved every minute, and they would do it all over again. And so the ones I catch now, I went to the game not long ago, and one of the gentlemen that I know through work, his grandson was playing. He goes, man, it's so much fun. I said, it is. It is so much fun. And he said, I don't care if he goes to college and does all that. This is the best time of my life. And his mom walked up and said, when he jogs off that field and hugs his teammates after a win, this is the best time of our life. So the alternative of not playing sports is sitting at home on a phone, on a computer, on a laptop, watching Netflix, basically doing nothing. Unless you want to say, I'm giving up sports to become a dancer, I'm a professional piano person. Whatever it is, that's why I'm saying find your it. What do you want to do? And then pour your heart into it. I've heard things on social media is, what if you knew you would love, 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 but your heart would be broken in 6 years? You'd have the best date girlfriend of your life and you'd spend 6 years of romance, but in the end, it was over. Would you accept that? I had 20 years of marriage with Luke's mom. We divorced. I'd do it all over again. I'd do it all over again. I think we become best friends because of certain reasons. And I go, in order to find love, you got to risk having your heart broken. So same thing with sports. The only thing, and I love the Georgia Tech coach. I wish I could quote what he is. Georgia, yeah, he does some great stuff, but he says the sport is horrible because you pour your heart into, and then you're not guaranteed to win. The only thing you're guaranteed by not putting your heart and soul into is to lose. And that's it. So we're going to put everything into this. Parents, dad, all this stuff. Kid works hard. And then when he comes home and he fails, say, that's okay. We're going to work this week. Next week, we're going to do better. That is a building block for being a dad, being a good worker, starting your own business. And when things don't go well, you don't quit. You work harder. You find a way to get customers in the door. Everything is a setup. And we talked before this about a poem that Bear Bryant used to read. I had this huge poster at my baseball academy, and I printed it. I did a lot of stuff, but it was right as soon as you walked in the door. I had numerous parents that would stand there and read that, and I would catch them turn away, and they'd have tears in their eyes. And if you want me to read it, I'll be glad to read it. This was a poster. I'm going to read this, and you're going to have some parents go, oh my God, I love that on Craig's wall. So I grew up in Alabama. Bear Bryant, everyone loved Bear Bryant as a kid. You wanted to play college football at Alabama because of Bear Bryant. But
just so everyone knows, Bear Bryant was literally like Nick Saban of his age, maybe even better. The stadium's named after him, like he was Mr. Football.
As a 8-year-old kid, my dad loved Alabama football. We sat and watched it, but my dad gave me this when I was a kid. These are one of those things my dad did for me, who didn't play sports, couldn't teach me how to throw, hit, run, do anything. But he gave me this on a piece of paper, and it was Bear Bryant's daily prayer. Okay, so this is what Bear Bryant said every morning before breakfast. This is the beginning of a new day. God has given me this day to use as I will. I can waste it or use it for good. What I do today is very important because I am exchanging a day of my life for it. When tomorrow comes, the day will be gone forever, leaving in its place something I have traded for it. I want it to be a gain, not a loss. I want it to be good, not evil. I want it to be a success, not a failure, in order that I shall not regret the price that I paid for this day. That was my teaching. I read it my whole life, understood it more. It's funny, as you get older, you get a softer heart and better perspective of things. I mean, I went through cancer with Luke, which was the hardest thing I've ever went through. And some people still don't know that. I don't even know if we mentioned it on the podcast last time. Luke had lymphoma at 7 years old and did 12 months of chemotherapy. And it was, I weigh 210, I'm fit. I weighed about 165 pounds 6 months into that. And I looked dead. And I don't even know how I would have done if God hadn't have, saved his life. And I say that because there's some people that have cancer and don't survive it, but he had 12 months of chemotherapy. So I had a different view of sports. My son went through 12 months of chemo and struggled for a couple of years. And I used to tell him, I don't care if he ever plays anything. I want him to live, grow up, have a girlfriend, maybe get married and enjoy life. Sports didn't mean anything to me. So it changed the way I taught kids, because once you go through 12 months of chemo and they got a 50-50 chance to live, you really are not worried how well he's playing baseball. You just want to hug him and love him and tell him that. Now, he did great, and he grew late because of that, stunted his growth. And the doctor, the oncologist, said he will grow a lot 13, 14 years old, and that's what happened. But, Luke just went through Tommy John surgery, so we both have now had Tommy John surgery.
Matching scars. His is a little bit more advanced now.
His is more advanced, and I had Frank Job do mine in California.
Okay, Job certainly knows what he's doing.
Job knew what he was doing, and Dr. Yoakum did it with him. But I went to Dallas with Luke and met Dr. Meister, who is incredible. He is such a good dude. Listen, the nicest man I've ever talked to. And I'm going to throw something out to see if you even know this. And you're not as old as I am, but when I was a kid, I grew up, I watched the Munsters. Do you know the Munsters? Okay. His uncle was the vampire in the Munsters. Well, he sent me the picture because I'm going to show it to you. I said, and the grandpa, Munster, is he your uncle? He's like, that's my dad's brother. And he said he was brilliant, one of the smartest people you've ever met, but that was his uncle. So, and then when I saw, I pulled it up, he kind of looks like it. So, and they all look alike. So it was a really good thing, but man, did he explain, he did incredible stuff. He took good care of Luke, and he's texted me a couple of times, but those are things that Luke's going to be fine through this. He went through cancer. He went through struggles and, chemo and checkups. And by the time Luke was 10, man, nothing fazed him. And he'd been through a lot. And
it's like he's impervious to pain.
Well, I don't want to say this, because I may get teary-eyed, but I want it said. We were sitting one night watching the basketball in the spring, and, they had the Jim Bavano thing and Jimmy V Foundation, and he died. And they came on and said, Jimmy V, now Luke was 7.5, middle of chemo, but they said, Jimmy V Foundation, he died with cancer. Well, and I'm sitting on the couch, and we didn't talk about death with the cancer. We just told him he's sick. He said, yeah, it's called cancer. And Luke spun and looked at me really quick. And I looked at him. He goes, am I going to die? That's what he asked me. And I looked at him, because the guy just said he passed away. And I said, no. He goes, that guy died, and he had cancer. And we were 6 months in. But it was almost like he didn't put two and two together. And I said, the cancer you have doesn't kill people. That's what I said. I said, he had a different cancer. And I'm sitting there lying, And I said, you're not going to die. You're going to be just fine. And I leaned over, I gave him a kiss. And I got up and I walked upstairs. I said, I'll be right back. And I went up and wept like a baby. I did. I sat down on the bed and I cried for 15 minutes. And I don't know what they said on TV, but he turned really quick. And, and then, Luke doesn't remember all that stuff we talked about. They've interviewed him about it. He's like, I don't really remember a lot of stuff. I was 7 and go through there. But, every once in a while I'll tell him some things that you said to me. And he's like, I do remember that. And I do remember that. But when your son at 7 asks you, am I going to die? Man, there's probably not a more terrible place to be. I do say this a lot, that when I'm on my deathbed one day, and I hope he's standing there and his sister's by my side, I'm going to look at him and go, I'm glad you got cancer. It's the best thing that ever happened. Changed their family. I spent every minute with them. I had business trips, and I'm very good at what I do with the medical sales and stuff, and they'd send me on trainings to Vegas, and I said, hey, man, I'm here.
Yeah, you got to
No, I did. I changed everything. And I always spread myself thin. I try to do a lot of different stuff, but I locked in and spent the next 10 years of my life right in front of Luke and right in front of his daughter, his sister. And I spent so much time with him. And I made it fun. And I wouldn't, if they had never received $1, Luke has made a lot of money playing baseball. And my daughter went on, had college for free, was an All-American, and is going to be an incredible coach. If they had finished at high school and never played one day past high school, it would have been the best 10 years of my life. Just spending time at the field, hitting ground balls. I tell parents all the time, I don't know about you, but going to hit with my son and my daughter brought tears to my eyes every time we went out. And I didn't care. I didn't ask God for one bit of a payment. Hey, we've put all this work in. I need a scholarship. When he didn't say anything. And in life, when we do work or do things, help people and not expect anything back, I think that's when we're blessed the most.
Yeah.
So I would tell every parent, go through the years. If they love baseball, buy them the batting gloves. That's cool. You know, if you can afford it. I used to have parents trade bats because I can't buy any more bats. So I'd have, well, Johnny's 15, here's his 12-year-old bat. And I would give it to the other parents. So there's things you can do. I still do that. Get him the new bat. Get him the batting gloves. Let him do it. They'll put work in, but enjoy it. But please don't expect anything out of it except the time spent with your child, which to me is the greatest thing ever. And the sooner the parents figure that out, they'll sit back and they'll enjoy every moment, and they won't be looking for a payback. They'll enjoy the process. And if it doesn't pay you off at the end of the, then so what? I had a great time. You know, and that's what parents should understand.
If anybody was wondering why you were coming back for a second episode, I think you just explained it. No, man, I can't even tell you how much of a blessing it is that I get to play a part in your guys' life.
Oh, it's
this you clearly not only have so much to share, but it comes from such an authentic place that I feel like this game needs more people like you, parents. I'll make sure Craig's information, I'll make sure it's on the show notes so that if they want to reach out, they certainly can. My man.
That's good.
This was great.
That's good. I think it's better than the other one.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.